and also hope that you are having a good day so far. Today we'll be doing our grade 6 English lesson on addresses. So we'll be doing our grade 6 English lesson on addresses. And before we start with our lesson on addresses, right? Before we start with our lesson, we're going to log into aplusstudents.ca. Once we've logged on to aplusstudents.ca with our username as well as our password, and then we're going to select the subject of language arts. And then grade 6. And once we've selected the subject of language arts, grade 6, and then we're going to scroll down up until we get to the chapter of addresses, right? So we're basically going to find out today about addresses and what addresses are. And we are doing our chapter is addresses. The subject is English, which is also language arts, grade 6. And the lessons that we are focusing on under the chapter of addresses is formatting street addresses. So formatting street addresses. So of course, in this case, our lesson addresses is about street addresses, right? And basically the place where you live or the place where you reside, right? It has a specific address. So addresses, right, are the particulars of the place where someone lives or where an organization is situated. Meaning that if I can make an example, let's have Google Maps, right? If you want to get to somewhere or you want to get to a place, instead of nowadays typing in the specific address because we don't know the address, we can just type in the name of the, let's say, the organization or the place, right? And then automatically, let's say Google Maps will basically take you or navigate you to that specific place. Because what happens is that once you, let's say, buy a house or you, let's say, own an organization like Walmart or something, and then automatically it is in placed on, let's say, it's placed on the maps, right? Let's say like on Google Maps or something. So then instead of typing in the address because we don't know the address, you can sometimes just write the name of the organization. But of course, if you're going to someone's place, right, then you should at least know the address of that specific place, but it's already mapped on the Google Maps, for example. But addresses are the particulars of the place where someone lives or an organization is, or where an organization is situated, right? That is addresses. So when it comes to addresses, right, remember it's a place where you live, it's a place where you reside, right? And when addressing personal correspondence, right, be sure to use the correct format and punctuation. And part of also, let's say, addresses, right? When you specifically based on what the sentence is. The sentence says when addressing personal correspondence, right? It's like if you're having some form of communication with someone and we either need to, let's think of letters, right? We have to write a letter, send an email or something, not even email, a letter. Then with sending letters, right? We still need to write the address on the top right corner of a specific letter, right? So when addressing personal correspondence, be sure to use the correct formatting as well as punctuation marks. So if you are typing in an address of a specific person or the particulars of a specific person, right, then you need to have the format correct, right? If you are writing to Mr. Patrick Kelly, or you want to know the, let's say, the particulars of Mr. Patrick Kelly, right? Then on the first line, so this is as if you are writing a letter to the specific person. So on the first line, right, you're going to write the recipient's address. You're writing to who even that needs to receive this letter, right? So on the first line, which is this first line, I'm going to make the first line red. We write the recipient's name. I'm going to write it next to it. So recipient's name. That is the person who you are either addressing the letter to, the person you're in communication to, the person who needs to receive the letter. So we are writing it to that specific person. So on the first line, we need to write that recipient's name, and that is Mr. Patrick Kelly, for example. Then on the second line, I'm going to choose a different color. On the second line, write the street address. So you write the street address. And I'm going to put the street address. And this is the place where someone lives, it's the place where someone resides, right? So on the second line, we write the street address. And this address is, for example, remember an address is always capitalized because it's the name of a place, right? So name of a place, it needs to be capitalized. So if you, for example, write the address in these two, for example, you write the, let's say the house address, the house number. So you write the number in which, like the house number or the complex number or the apartment number or the flat number, right? Or the organization's number. Then we write the street address, which, for example, Kensington, and for example, street or city. After the abbreviated word, which is CT, do not forget to add your period. Full stop, period. Right? If you abbreviate that word, you need to put a full stop or a period. Then on the third line, so on the third line of writing your address, right? Or when we addressing a personal correspondence, right? And this is of course to someone else. Then on the third line, you need to write down the city. You need to write down the city. State abbreviation and zip code. So you write the state, the first the city, the state, which is abbreviated, as well as the zip code. And remember, you need to capitalize the city and both the letters of the state. Because remember, it is basically, if it wasn't abbreviated, we would have written the state's name out in full. So you need to capitalize the name of the street, or let's say the city, as well as capitalize both letters of the state that you abbreviated, which is over here, capitalize. And once you have capitalized it in front of the state, right, after the city, you need to put a comma. So after the city, you put a comma, then we write the state, which is an abbreviation, and then we write the zip code or the zip lock. It's put the zip code. So this is basically where we write the city, the state name, as well as the zip code. And basically, this is how we write your address, especially if you are writing some form of correspondence or a letter to the other person, right? Remember, you need to first have the person's details in order to know where to send it to. Because if we didn't have Mr. Kelly, Patrick Kelly's, for example, details, we wouldn't have known the street name, the number of the house, right? The city, state, or the zip code. So basically, this is the format in which you need to write or address personal correspondence, right? As well as with the proper punctuation mark, as into where the period must be, where must the comma be, and so on. All right. So once again, if you are addressing a personal correspondence to someone, right, then you need to be sure to write the correct format, right? Or you need to write it in the correct format as well as the punctuation marks. And then on the first line, we need to write who we are addressing the letter to, right? The recipient that will be receiving the letter, the person that will be getting the letter, the person that you are sending the letter to. Then on the second line, right, we need to write our street address. And our street address, right, consists of the house number, like the number of the house, number of the apartment, number of the, yeah. Also, the name of the street, for example, Kensington Street. And then on the third line, we write the city, comma, the state abbreviated, and then we also write the zip code. So that is how we write an address, right? Or that is basically an address. And once again, an address, it is the particulars of the place where someone lives. It is the place where someone lives. It is the particulars, the details of where someone lives or an organization that it is situated. Right? All right, so we are also doing our lesson on aplusstudents.ca. All right, so now we're going to a+students.ca and we're going to formatting street addresses. Formatting street addresses. And we already said that when addressing personal correspondence, we need to be sure to use the correct format as well as punctuation marks when we are writing a letter, right? Or we are writing or letter addressing personal correspondence. On the first line, we need to write the recipient's name, either Mr. or Mrs., or just the name and surname of someone. On the second line, we need to write the street address and be sure to capitalize it and include a period after an abbreviation. So if you're writing CT, then you need to put full stop. All right, then on the third line, we have the city, the name of the city, followed by a comma, then the state, which is abbreviated and needs to be capitalized, and then we write the zip code. And that is basically the format of writing and, let's say, addressing correspondence. Right? All right, so now we said format and punctuate the address correctly by fixing the two errors. So we need to format and punctuate the address correctly by fixing the two errors within a specific sentence, let's say, within the given address. All right, it says Bobby Hunt, 6448 Alexander Road, Mitchell's VA 22929. So what is the two, let's say, format or punctuations that we need to look at? It says Bobby Hunt. All right, so if we look at the two areas, right? And then we can say, if we were to rewrite this, right, this address, so we can say it is Bobby Hunt or Mr. Bobby Hunt, right? We write the street address, then we can say 6448, capital letter for Alexander, and then capital letter R for road. And remember, they also said that you need to all right, so when writing the street address, right? So when writing the street address, right, we need to be sure to capitalize it and include a period after the abbreviation. So we put an a period, sorry, after the abbreviation, which is RD for road. Then we write the city, which is Mitchell's, for example, followed by a comma, VA, which is capitalized, right? And the zip code, which is, for example, 22729. And that is how we rewrite that correct address, right? All right. Here we have the name of the recipient. We have the street let's say the house number, street name, road or CT followed by a period. Mitchells is a city, VA is a state. At there we have our Ziploc, which is 22729. And that is just an example. All right. Now we need to format and punctuate the address correctly by fixing the three errors. So three errors. So let's start with who the recipient is, the person that we are addressing the letter to. So the person we're addressing the letter to is Tom, capital letter H for Henson. Right? Because remember someone's name as well as surname starts with a capital letter. So Tom Henson, that is the person that we're addressing the letter to. Now we need to write our street address, right? Which is 3427 Serenity. Right? And Boulevard needs to be capitalized, which is BLVD and our period. Don't forget your period after the street address. Then we have the city, followed by a comma, FL, which indicates the state, and our zip code. And then we have the zip code. Guys, remember that you need to follow the format as well as the punctuations and stuff that you add in order to show the address or formatting of an address. So, for example, we addressing this letter to Tom Henson or Henson, and his street address is 3427 Serenity Boulevard, Boulevard with a capital letter B. After Boulevard, we put a period. Then we add the street. Now the street, the city, which is, for example, Lady Lake. The state, which is FL abbreviated. And then we have the zip code, which is 32159. All right, let's do one more. All right, so we're going to do one more, right? So this address now is, here we say we need to format and punctuate the addresses correctly by fixing three errors. So it is directed to Henry Pearson. This is our recipient, capital letters. Then we have our street address, which is the house number, 2nd Street, right? And ST for street, full stop. I'll put, let's say period. Then we have our city, which is Indianapolis. Then it needs to be followed by a comma. Then we write the state, which is I and N, both capitalized. And then we write the zip code. Right? And that is how we write an address. We have the recipient's details or the recipient's name, the person we're addressing it to, for example, Henry Pearson. Then we have the street address, which is the name of the house, for example, Second Street with a period at the end. Then we write the city, which is Indianapolis, the state, which is IN, and both needs to be capitalized if you're going to abbreviate it. And then we have our zip code, which is 46216. And that is our address, or let's say the correspondence, personal correspondence. All right, so now we're going on to our test. We need to format and punctuate the address correctly by fixing the three errors. If we look at the first option, right, it says Mr. Jeff Conley, the street address, which is 421 Churchill, PKWY, period. Slaterville Springs, comma, NY, which is New York, sorry. And then we have a zip code, which is 14881. So do we write it the way we formatted the first one? Or if we look at the second one, it says Mr. Jeff Conley, 541 Churchill, small letter C for Church Hill, PKWY, no period. Slaterville Springs, NY, yes, but we shouldn't add another comma after the state, and then 14881. So which means that if we are going to fix the punctuation or the format or the errors, then we're going to choose the, the first one, which means that it is addressed to Mr. Jeff Conley. Street address is 5421 Churchill, PKWY, and our period. Slaterville Springs, punctuation mark, which is a comma. New York, or NY, which is the state, and then our zip code is 14881. So we're choosing the first one. And the first one is correct. All right, so we need to once again format and punctuate the address correctly by fixing one error only. If we try and fix an error in the first one, then we're addressing it to Fred Spencer. Then we have our street address, which is 6517 9th Street. And remember, street needs to be capitalized S. All right. So if we look at the address, right, we say that the first one is addressed to Fred Spencer. There we have 65179 Street. In this case, street needs to be written with a capital letter S for street. And then we have the city, which is Woodruff, comma, AZ, which is his state. And then we have the zip code, which is 85942. So if we fix this, then we're going to choose the second one. Because the second one, right, it also already has the name and the surname of the recipient. There we have 65179 Street, but street is already fixed and written with a capital letter. Woodruff, comma, AZ 85942. And the second one is correct. Well done. The second one is correct. We need to format and punctuate the address correctly by fixing three errors. Three errors. So we have Brad Fowler, which is the recipient, the receiver. And the street address, right, is 1608 5th Street. 5th is written with a small letter. So if we look at the top one first, it says 1608 5th Street, which means that in the first one, right, 5th is correct. Then Royalton, comma, KY, comma, 41464. So that is not correct. Then the second one is correct because it says Royalton, comma, KY is a state, and we said both needs to abbreviated. And then we have the zip code. So we're going to choose the second one in order to fix those three errors. And the second one is correct. The second one is correct. We need to format and punctuate the address correctly by fixing three errors. Three errors. The first option is Mr. and Mrs. Malone because it's being addressed to Mr. and Mrs. Malone, sorry. Then we have the street address, which is 9740 Hudson Road. And then we have Ullman Mo 65083. So which means that if we look at the next one, then it's addressed to Mr. and Mrs. Malone, which is correct. Then we have our street address, which is 9740 Hudson Road. Road with a capital letter and an end point. And if we look at the second one, right? The second one is correct because even if you look at the last sentence, right? If we were to fix road, it's capital letter R and D and the point. And then here by the last word, Ullman, M-O, it is one, comma, MO, and then the street zip code. And the second one is correct. Yes, well done. The second one is correct. Remember, punctuation needs to be in its place, right? Needs to be capital letter, it needs to be capital letter. If it needs to be lowercase, it needs to be lowercase. So we need to format and punctuate the address correctly by fixing the 3 errors. So Miss Ella Thompson, street address 8431 Madison Drive, Burgess, sorry, VA 22432. There is a lot happening within that first one, right? But if we look at the second one, it says Miss Ella Thompson. We are addressing it to Miss Ella Thompson, right? The street address is 8431. So 8431 Madison Drive. And we need to put an endpoint after that abbreviation. For example, DR. So we will go with the second option, right? Because Ella is written with a capital letter. Drive is written with a capital letter as well as it has an endpoint. So we'll go with the second option. And the second option is correct. We need to format and punctuate the address correctly by fixing the 2 errors. Will you be able to fix the 2 errors within, let's say, the sentences in front of you? We need to either look at the format, look at the punctuation. So if we look at the first one, right, it is addressed to Bill Ellison. Street address, which is 4278 Park CT, and we put our endpoint. So we need to format and punctuate the address correctly by fixing 2 errors, right? So we already have Bill Ellison. And if we look at the first one, it is Bill Ellison, 4278 Park CT, which is full stop. And then El Paso TX79936. So nope for option 1, right? If we look at option 2, right? Remember option 1 needs to at least have the capitalized and punctuations. The second one is Bill Ellison. And if we fix the 2 areas, and then we will choose option 2. Option 2, right? So this is basically repeating of formatting street addresses, right? But remember, you need to, if you are in correspondence with someone else, you need to firstly start by the recipient's name as well as surname. And if we look at the first option, it is addressed to Mrs. Ella Lopez, 18 Washington CIR, no endpoint. And then Hardaway comma L, comma 36039. Let's look at the second one. The second one is Mrs. Emma Lopez. The address, the street address is 18 Washington, CIR, and of endpoint. The city is Hardaway. The state is AL, which is both capitalized. And then we have the zip code, which is 36039. So we will go with the second option. So if we look at, okay, so we're going to continue by looking at the formatting as well as the and punctuating the addresses. If we look at the first one, it says Maria and Aaron Baldwin, right? Because it's being addressed to Maria and Aaron Baldwin. Then we have 9321, which is the house number. Central Boulevard, which is the street address, and there we have a full stop by the, there's an endpoint we have by the address. And then we have issue MD20645, which means that we need to go on to the next one, which is Maria and Aaron Baldwin that is being addressed to. Then we have 9321, which is Central Boulevard, period, and that is a street address. So if we look at the, let's go to the second option. It says Maria and Aaron Baldwin, right? The address is 9321 Street, which is Central Boulevard, and then we also have an endpoint of the boulevard. Then the street, another street, the city is Issue, for example. The state is MD, both capitalized. And then we have our, let's say it's like a number, which is 20645. So which means that we are going with the second option. Second option. And the second option is correct. So that is basically how we write and format a street address, right? When we are writing a street address, right, remember there is a recipient, somebody that is receiving your letter or your correspondence, right? And an address is basically a correspondence either between two people or two or more people. So if we look at the format and fix, let's say 3 errors, the first one is Jim, Haley, and Mary Kemp. They already have a mistake, which is M for Mary. 237 Hill Street, another mistake when it comes to street. In Sun City West, AZ 85375. So now if we look at the second option, we have the name and surname, which is Jim Haley and Mary Kemp. The street address is 237 Hill Street, capital letter S for street, endpoint thereafter. And then we have Sun City West, followed by a comma, a Z, and then 85375. which means that we will go with option 2. So if we choose the correct fixed up address, then we will go with the second one, right? Because remember, we have a recipient. The recipient is someone that receives, or someone that you will be writing your specific letter to, right? Then we have our address, which is our street address, where you start with the name and the number in which you live in, the name of the street, for example, Alexander Road. If you write road, you need to abbreviate road, capitalize with an end point at the end. City is Mitchell's City. The state is VA, capitalized, comma after the city, and then 22729, which means that we will go with option 2. So well done. All right, so that is now the end of our lesson on addresses. Right, remember, an address is let's say, correspondent between two or more people, right? Addresses is more like all the ways of communication, if you should, of communication. And there's a recipient that is receiving that received the communication, the email, right? All right, so that is now the end of our lesson on formatting street addresses. Thank you very much for joining the class, and I really hope you're going to have a good day further. Goodbye.